Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching. We're back with another episode of the Digital Edge podcast. I'm Dominic Mugli, here with Francoise Lamotte.
Hello, Dominique.
Hi, Francoise. And we have another interesting topic on the docket for today. Francoise, do you want to introduce
Yes,
the topic real quick?
yes. So the topic is about digital life balance. Are we still in control of our destinies when we are navigating the digital edge? And just to get things started, I found a very interesting stat that an average person touches their phone 2,600 times a day. I was, yeah, I was really, you know, totally frightened by that number. But Dominic, you also have found some interesting stats.
I was doing a little bit of AI chatbot inquiries on the topic, and I was wondering how much time we actually spend looking at screens. And check out what came out. So I didn't verify this data, but looking back at the last 30 years, back in the day in 1995 when we were a little bit younger, we had TVs and we had video games. They were maybe not online just yet, but we had them. And then over time, right, you see the advent of streaming and digital video and social media and web browsing and so forth, right? That then increased to effectively double of screen time over the course of these 30 years. So quite intense, that increase, right? And I think we'll get into a little bit more topics about that. It's just not just like how it was consumption, like it was back in the day 30 years ago, but there's other ways to interact and maybe distract us also.
Yeah. So we won't go, into the effect of that time spent on screen on health and obesity and those topics. This is not for today. But of course, these are consequences of all the time we spend online. So maybe, I was thinking maybe the first population that I wanted to discuss is people like us who were not born we were born before having a smartphone in our hands, but still, our life is very much influenced by, the consumption of digital. I mean, myself, the first thing I do in the morning is take my phone and look at the news and the weather. And, we've seen a big impact on our life. As a person, we'll talk about us at work, but as a person, of course, we cannot live without our phone. If we forget the phone, we are losing everything we have in life. We see a certain form of addiction and maybe also impact on our sleep patterns, on our ability to concentrate, on the presence we have with other people when we put our phone on the table at lunch or dinner time. So we see that this is already impacting the way we live and our life balance. What is your experience, Dominic?
Yeah, I think very similar, right? I think the computer networks, right, and the miniaturization of electronic devices, namely cell phones, right? You can basically have access to anything, anywhere, right? And then you add social media on top of it and the urgent notifications that we get to be constantly engaged, reminded, right? And it goes back to your point about 2,600 pickups per day per person. That's wild, right? Considering that we sleep for about a third of that, and in these 16 hours, we're always grabbing that phone and looking at it and responding text messages and posting things online, whatever the case may be, responding to work email and so forth, right? It's incredible the amount of time that goes into spending time on the screen and on electronic devices versus the real world, if you will, right? That's around us and interacting with people.
And one thing that is, I was going to say interesting, but also maybe concerning is that the more connected we are, the more we can feel isolated. So, we are connecting with a lot of people, but at the same time, very often people find themselves alone or not talking to real people and deteriorating the actual social connection. So, this is maybe one of the consequences of this digital life.
Yeah, I think so too. What I see is from personal experience and having used social media for a while is that there's this huge reality gap between what you see being posted and promoted on social networks versus what you see in the real world, right? There's a lot of stereotyping going on social networks, right? People look a lot meaner than they are in the real world, but it's this pursuit of views and clicks that came with it, right? Which amplifies the desire to post something crazy and something that gets engagement and that gets shared, right? So it amplifies the almost the negativity, right? Things that make people scared and uncertain and interested ultimately, right, in knowing what's going on. And so I think there's a little bit of a deterioration in the perception of humanity along the way almost, which I think is not a good trend.
Yeah, and you mentioned addiction. I think we saw recently that, was it Facebook that was sued for that was recognized that their algorithm is creating addiction, and I think that was in the US. You remember that? Was it a person who committed suicide and that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the details. Yes, but there was a recent verdict where Facebook was held accountable for addictive practices in their social media network, right? So I think it naturally leads towards that. If your revenues as a business are by getting people to come back and spend time and view things and scroll and interact, right? Because it drives revenues, which is what generates money for Facebook and other companies in that space. And so naturally, the focus will be to promote content that increases interest in interaction and these pickups and people to come back again to see what's new, right?
Yeah. And maybe the last point on that I have observed on us as adults is, also the fact that there is now this habit of over-relying on digital tools, and I would say AI tools.
Yeah, I was going to say AI is at the forefront of that, maybe.
I've seen some of my friends now for anything, their first reaction is, let's ask ChatGPT. Yeah, anything. They don't even try to find the answer by themselves or try to memorize or remember anything. It's just okay. And I think this is another big concern that not trying to do things by using our brain, but over relying on AI as a tool for anything.
Yeah, I think people fall into multiple camps, as we've discussed before, right?
Yeah.
Where you have like the highly dependent people that almost again can't function without it anymore. And I still see a lot of people who are very skeptical, not maybe deliberately, but they seem to be too busy and not have time, and it doesn't quite work for what they want to do, and so they just leave the AI stuff alone, right? For better or worse.
So maybe just maybe a few tips or practices that I can share, to try to get a bit of distance between the digital life and the real life, and these have been probably shared, but having this smartphone free zone, like no phone in the bedroom, no phone when it's dinner time. So trying to find those moments where there is a disconnect from digital tools and phones, and also having some moments of boring time or idle time to stay away from this constant solicitation, as we mentioned on social media, where it's one video after the other and it
Yeah,
never ends. And
yeah.
being able to stay away from that and have a bit of moments of self-reflection and disconnect can be good practices. So maybe moving to the second part is about, people as working employees and how digital has totally invaded their lives. I mean, multitasking has been one, being on call 24/7 was another one at some point, although now there are sometimes rules to say, you should not be disturbed in evenings and weekends. We have now the emergence of using AI, same as in the private life, AI for everything,
Yeah.
and also creating new dependencies. So, how can we establish a digital life balance for people at the workplace?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. No, there was some time ago in the past when computing was basically a business activity, right, or a business capability, and slowly but surely, right, the personal computing kind of started taking over, and all of a sudden, right, personal computing surpassed business computing, and you had like better equipment at home, you had a better devices at home than what you had at work, right? And so I think we're still in that point where a lot of businesses are still catching up to that, though cloud computing has helped with maintaining currency for businesses. But I think the implications there is, and what I see from my end also, is this constant disruption that you have in the workplace, right? Finding quiet time, 2 hours where nobody's going to bother you, nobody's going to send a message or there's a notification, right? I think that's probably the biggest challenge for many workers, to be able to find deep thinking time these days. Again, 2,600 pickups per day, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's easy to do that at work as well, right? If you're busy, you get a ping somewhere and you get a notification on the watch or whatever the case may be, right? And I think that's probably I see as the ultimate bad impact on the work, to be able to get work done and to get complex work done like we have to.
And I think a correlation to that is that, how you manage meetings where everybody's on their computer and probably multitasking. So there are again a few, hygiene rules maybe to implement is, when you're in a meeting, you are really in the meeting and not doing three things at the same time on your computer. And that's even more true for online meetings. As you said, maybe having some block time for deep thinking and without any solicitation, and maybe having some weekly digital detox. I remember some companies saying like no emails on a particular day, so that people can really focus on the work and not be called all the time. So I mean, there are some maybe rules or routines to be set in that sense. But
Yeah.
now let's move to probably, I would say, maybe the most concerning segment of the population, which are the people who were born in the era of social media, smartphones, digital everywhere, digital first. And you read and you hear a lot of professionals already talking about shortened attention spans
Hmm.
related to all these videos that are very, very short. Impact on deep reading. People don't read books anymore, or have
Yeah.
difficulty in terms of memorizing, thinking autonomously. Um, all the things about social media anxiety, because if I'm not connected, I'm going to miss something. And then now, AI in education, where it's so much easier to ask the LLM to do the work and just, present. So you see that this is an even bigger tsunami. And I don't know, if we'll be able to, have a certain level of sanity or detox for that generation. I mean, I have children, you have children. Is this what you see around you?
Yes, I think there is a little bit of that, right? I mean, I see it with my kids. There's a desire to gravitate towards screen time at any free moment, right? So for again, I probably shouldn't say it if they watch this episode, but I would prefer if schools were to just not allow phones while on school premises. Right, at our school district, there have been discussions like that. I think I heard about one school in the process of just banning phones for the day. Right, you put it down in the morning at 8, and you pick it up at 3 in the afternoon or whenever you get out, and you can continue then, and everybody will be okay. Right,
Yeah,
so I think.
they have implemented that. I know in schools in France, some of
Mhm.
them, and they've seen a very big change in behaviors because now children are starting to play again with each other and
Yeah,
to talk.
yeah.
And also, they have established some book reading times where people, they have to read half an hour per day. So they put all these measures to try to,
Mhm.
as you said, to go against that, iPhone or smartphone is the go-to device anytime I have free time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. I think there's another dimension to that as well, right? It's the allowing that distraction to take place is one thing, but I've been working with our school district for a little bit with regards to technology and incorporating technology into the instructional component, right? And and what I found is that with new technologies, there may be opportunity to use them for better teaching, but there's a lot of resistance from the status quo, right? To say, hey, it's not conducive to our teaching methods, right? So I think if you say that all of a sudden, AI is this super brain, you can get your answers quickly and so forth, right? There's not a lot of discussion around teaching differently. Like how do you, and I think you mentioned that very often in our conversations, of how you keep thinking despite having the tools with the answers available, because you still need to know how things work and what you need to solve at the end of the day, right? But
Yeah.
how can you then elevate education from simple problem solving to the next level, right? That we can still persist and grow on that
Mm.
while maybe giving up on the mundane simple task, right? If there's a way to do that, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, with help from AI, maybe not yet, but maybe a teacher, an individual teacher can then support, 50 children or 100 children, right? That
Yeah.
can then be more independent learning. I don't know what that looks like, right? But there's less of a desire right now to change the ways of teaching despite newer technologies being available. So I think there's a little bit a change needed also from educators to look at how to teach better with tools that are available today that weren't here 10 years ago.
So I agree. I mean, as in many sectors, I'm sure that there are very big opportunities for AI to add value. And I think I've seen some example in China already where it's really a personalized teaching experience
Mm,
where, the
yeah.
AI enables students to focus on where they need to learn more. And so this is happening for sure. A big opportunity, I agree. I think on the other side, because of digital tools for young generation is not only in school but it's everywhere,
Yeah.
and I think there is value to maybe do two things, as you mentioned. One is learn to think first before jumping into using AI to solve everything, and I think the other point which is very important for me as a person working on innovation is the value of boredom and being able to have some idle time without solicitation, because we know that being bored is a key for creativity. That's when new ideas and invention happen, not when you are constantly solicited by some new videos happening every 10 seconds. So I think cultivating boredom with children and teenagers and young adults is also something very important.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I hear from a lot of people, they get their best ideas doing boring, mundane, manual tasks, or in the shower, while running, while driving for a long distance, really, where you don't need to be very active, right? And so,
Yeah.
yes, I think if you have the screen in front of your face and you're consuming, I think there's less of a chance to that because you're being programmed at the same time.
So I think we are reaching the conclusion of our podcast, even though we would have, a lot more to say. But I think this point about digital life balance first is going to be a big societal issue, and I think we need to be aware of the consequences of being too much hooked to our device, consequences on our health, on our well-being, on our capabilities. So, I think this should be the concern for individuals, but also probably, authorities to tackle those issues, whether it's at the company level or more at, the government level. But I'm afraid that if we do nothing, we might have some very big impacts on society. At least that's my view. What do you think?
Yeah, I think could very well be if you leave it alone, right, unchecked, because it's just too easy to constantly consume, right? It's
Yeah.
simple, it's not very expensive, it's fun, it's exciting, right? And even in the news, right, that has been going on for a long time, right? The focus is on the scary things and the worrisome things and the right that can catch our attention. Yeah, and I would say until somebody figures out what to do, I think there's two aspects. Number one, turn off those notifications, especially on like on the phone and on the smartwatch or whatever you have. And the other thing it's kind of near and dear to me as parents, we're role models, and until the government tells us what to do, I think we have to make sure that we keep an eye on things with our youngsters. And I think the same goes for educators as well, right? As role models and steering things with the next generation in the right direction.
Excellent points. Thank you so much, Dominique, and talk to you for our next episode.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Thank you, Francois. Great conversation. Thank you all for watching, and make sure to subscribe and be informed of upcoming episodes from Digital Edge. See you next time.